Hey everyone, it's Sarah here. Today I am back to work on a couple of Traveler's Notebook pages. If you have some pages in your notebook that you're trying to complete, I would love for you to grab it and we can kind of work together and journal together today. But I have a couple of new stamp sets from Everyday Explorers that I want to share with you, and I'm also using this insert from Everyday Explorers. So these are some really fun stamp sets. There were actually several that are releasing today for March 2020, but I just have two of them here. So I'm going to link up the shop down in the description box if you want to go ahead and check them all out. I have the Goodreads stamp set, which I'm going to be using for this layout, and then I'm going to be grabbing the Get It Girl stamp set for another layout that I'll be putting together next. So I've also just torn up some paper. These were some scraps that I had left over. I think I was kind of inspired by the colors that were on the cover of this notebook. So the cover of this journal was a craft cardstock, and then there was a mustardy yellow jacket that was kind of wrapped around it, and so I had those sitting off to the side of my desk, and I think that's kind of why I was inspired to use these colors. I didn't realize that until later, but sometimes I'm just inspired by the colors that are around me, so that's what I went for here. And I'm just kind of going for a collage and imperfect look. A lot of my layouts tend to be more kind of linear and I don't know, more lined up and grid-like, and I just wanted to go a little bit opposite. I don't know, I still line up a lot of things, but I wanted it to be just a little bit more imperfect, and even down to applying the washi tape in a little bit. I wanted them to have kind of the torn look, and you'll see in a minute. If you're familiar with watching some of my other process videos, this might just look a little bit different, but I enjoyed this challenge of trying something new. And I really liked working on this ivory background. The background for this Traveler's Notebook, you can tell there is more of like an ivory than a true white. And normally I use like very stark white pages for my notebook if I'm not using like a pattern or something. And so that was, you wouldn't think that's a challenge, but for me it was a little bit, just because I'm used to using the white. And so I think that's also why I was kind of drawn to the craft cardstock here. I really liked how that looked against the ivory background. And I think that looks a little bit better than if it were to be backed by a white background. So anyways, those little details I'm super nerdy about, but for me, I just really like the look of that. And these photos that I printed off are a lot smaller than I'm used to working with. I think they're about 1.5 inches by 2 inches. And I printed them off of my my Canon selfie printer. I used the PicFrame app on my phone to put together a grid in I think it's the 3:2 ratio. And I put together the 6 photo grid and printed off these 3 photos along with a few others, and they just have a very thin white border, but all in all I believe they are 1.5 by 2 inches. I don't know if this size would look good for all kinds of photos. I'm gonna have to kind of play around with it. But for these snapshots of my Kindle, I didn't really need to see a lot of detail. So I thought it was, they were kind of perfect for this type of layout. And then I think probably some close-ups where you can really see the subject would also work in the size. But if you're looking for something with like a bunch of details or a landscape, I don't know, it might be a little bit too small, but it was really fun for this particular layout. You saw in the beginning what this journal looks like when it's all together, but I did remove the staples and I'm using these pages kind of outside of the notebook. So that's why it looks like a simple piece of paper here, but this is from that Traveler's Notebook insert. And I removed the staples for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's just easier when you have a really bulky notebook to be able to stamp and have flat pages. But my main reason is because this is part of my process of combining notebooks, which I will share very soon in a future video. Thank you to everyone that commented on my last video about wanting to see that. But I do remove the staples and the pages so that I can eventually combine them. So since I'm going to do that anyways, I just start my process with that, and it makes it easier to stamp in and do all the embellishing and all of that. So I'm just finishing up this first layout, finishing up my stamping, and I also grabbed some stickers from my stash just to add in a few more details. And I'm going to add a little bit more grid washi tape to the bottom left here just to kind of balance things out. I did want to just share a close-up of the back with you so you can see there is a little bit of shadowing, which is to be expected on a notebook page, but there wasn't any bleed through. And if you are keeping your notebook together and you're working in it like a traditional notebook, you shouldn't have any problems with that. You shouldn't need to really cover up anything on the back side. But yeah, just in case you were curious about that, because I know I always am when I'm looking into notebooks. And now I'm going to be documenting these two photos of my daughter on her first day of gymnastics using the Get It Girl stamp set, which is so good for documenting all the ladies in your life, all the strong women. I love so many of the sentiments that are on this stamp set, and I got to choose out quite a few of them which were applicable for this spread. So I'm going to be playing with some Kelly Purkey inks, which I've had forever. If you guys are looking to just start yourself with some good colors and not invest a ton of money, I totally recommend these tiny square inks from Kelly Purkey. I've linked them in my Amazon favorites, which is in the description box below. But these were the first colored inks that I purchased for myself years ago. They still work great, and I can just keep them all in a container. They're perfect for traveling with, and they're kind of a multi-purpose ink. They're dye inks, and they're just good for any kind of project. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want to have a good color variety to kind of play around with, I completely recommend these inks. So I'm just kind of collaging these stamps. I'm not being too specific about where I'm placing them down. I'm just kind of offsetting them, and I think of it kind of like a puzzle. I'm just finding little areas for different stamps to fit down into that overall picture, and it just helps to tie in some of the colors from the photos, and it's just a really fun way to embellish the page. These photos that I have are, I believe, about 3 by 4 inches, maybe a little bit smaller. So definitely bigger than the photos that I was using in my first layout. But I think I originally had planned to use them in my project Life, and then I just had them left over. So that happens a lot. Sometimes I'll just have leftover photos and they will end up in my traveler's notebook, and that just works out great. And then I felt like there was a little bit of spacing going on, some spacing issues going on in that little collage of stamps. So I went in and I just drew some stars, also to kind of tie in some of the black ink that I'm going to be adding with my journaling. And I really like how those little details look up there with the stamping. And I'm just going to finish off my journaling here and write a little bit on the left-hand side, and that is going to finish off this page. So I really hope you enjoyed seeing how these layouts came together. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and I will be posting a bonus video later this week. So go ahead and click that subscribe button if you want to be notified when that goes up, and so you don't miss any future videos. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye.